When you mention parallel universes, the eyes sort of roll up and you giggle and you say to yourself, this is just silly, this is nuts.
A man once walked into an airport with a passport from a country that doesn't exist. Officials were baffled, and the story barely made the news, yet it has puzzled researchers for decades. Every detail of his case defies logic, from the documents he carried to the claims he made about his life. Witnesses were certain he was real, but no records matched him, and authorities were left questioning reality itself. In this video, we are going to explore the astonishing story of the man from Taured and what it might mean for our understanding of the world.
And so the multiverse is not just some invention out of the ether. It flows out of an application of quantum mechanics to general relativity. We're not completely there yet with a full solution.
The airport anomaly. It was an ordinary summer day in Tokyo in 1954 when immigration officers at Haneda Airport met a man whose story would confuse them for decades. He was well-dressed, spoke fluent French and Japanese, and said he was in Japan for a regular business trip. Everything seemed fine until he handed over his passport. That was the moment things shifted. The passport looked official, but it listed his home country as Taured. Not Taiwan, not a spelling mistake. Taured. The officers checked the pages again and again, trying to figure out whether Taured was a small European country they had somehow missed. The stamps inside looked valid, showing travel across Europe and earlier visits to Japan, but the country itself did not exist. The man stayed calm. He insisted Taured was a real place located between France and Spain. He pointed to the right area on the map and looked irritated when they told him the only country there was Andorra. "That's not possible," he said. "My country has been there for over 1,000 years." He wasn't performing. He spoke as if everything he said was simple fact. His wallet held several currencies. His briefcase carried business papers and cards. Everything looked legitimate, but none of it could be confirmed. The Japanese company he claimed to be meeting had never heard of him. The embassy he mentioned was not real. Every attempt to trace his identity led nowhere. Officials decided to act carefully. They moved him to a hotel with strict supervision. Officers escorted him, and guards stayed outside his door all night. The man did not resist. He looked more annoyed than afraid, as if everyone else was misunderstanding something obvious. But when morning came, the room was empty. He was gone. The windows were sealed. The door had never been opened. The guards heard nothing. None of his belongings were there, and even the documents stored at the airport had vanished. For professionals who relied on routine and rules, this was more than confusing. It was impossible. The news quickly reached airport staff, local police, and intelligence services. What began as a strange passport check turned into a baffling mystery with no answers. There were no leads, no evidence, and no explanation. Just a passport from a place that didn't exist, and a disappearance no one could explain. The case was quietly closed, without any official report. But stories that are buried too quickly tend to resurface. Over time, the incident appeared in books, articles, and later online forums. Theories filled the gaps. Some talked about parallel worlds. Others mentioned time travel or secret experiments. The more people repeated the story, the more the details changed, making the truth harder to find. Still, something about this case stayed in people's minds. A man with knowledge he shouldn't have, documents no one could trace, and a disappearance that defied every rule. And as we continue, the most unsettling part isn't that he might have come from somewhere else. It's that someone like him existed in the first place. The vanishing room. The hotel was simple, and located in the middle of the city. It was chosen because it was easy to monitor. The man from Taured was placed in an inside room with no balcony, no external exit, and no possible escape route other than the door. Japanese officials were organized and methodical. They dealt with forged papers and suspicious travelers before, but this was completely different. The man did not fight his detainment. He didn't even seem concerned. He only looked frustrated that the world did not recognize a country that he believed was completely normal. He ate quietly, walked to his room with two officers, and watched them check the locks and windows. They stationed a guard at the door and noted the time. It was a little before midnight. The next morning, the guard knocked on schedule. No response. He knocked again. Still nothing. He opened the door and stood still. The room was untouched. The bed was empty. The sheets looked unused. There were no clothes, no bags, not even the dinner tray from the night before. The man had vanished. Security searched every part of the building. They checked the halls, the exits, the roof, and even the vents. No one had seen him leave. No camera showed anything unusual. It was as if he had simply stopped existing. Then came the part that made the case even more confusing. His passport, business papers, and customs forms were missing from the secure storage area at the airport. The locked file drawer had been opened and closed again without any signs of damage. One investigator later said the scene felt planned, but by someone who understood more than they did. A reported note in one file asked, "Is this man even human?" But none of these details appeared in the official documents because there were no official documents left. The case faded into the background for years, but the story didn't disappear. A customs officer shared it at a family dinner. A hotel worker passed it on to a relative. When the internet arrived, the whispers became widespread. The story changed with each retelling. Some said he carried multiple passports. Others claimed he predicted future political events. A few versions even said he disappeared in a flash of light. The more dramatic the detail, the more people shared it. But the core never changed. A man with papers from a country that didn't exist, placed under guard, who vanished from a locked room. Many dismissed it as fiction. Others saw it as a sign that alternate realities might intersect with ours. But hidden under the rumors was something no one expected, and something almost no one tried to examine closely. Because as strange as this story already sounds, what comes next is far more unsettling. The legend that wouldn't die. The story of the man from Taured should have vanished like many other airport anomalies. It should have been filed away, forgotten, and lost in paperwork. But it didn't. Instead, it began to spread. First quietly, then with an eerie boost. Someone told it at a bar. Someone else added a new detail. Soon it appeared in fringe publications and strange books with titles like Lost Travelers and Visitors from Elsewhere. It was always a small mention, never the main story. That only made it more unsettling. It was a story that didn't need exaggeration. The facts, even in their plain form, already felt impossible. As the years passed and the internet brought old stories back to life, the man from Taured resurfaced. Message boards in the early 2000s traded theories. Reddit threads labeled him a multiverse leak. YouTubers turned his story into dimly lit videos with glitchy audio and tense music. Everyone had a theory. No one had proof. Some said he was a time traveler from a future Earth with a different map. Others claimed he came from a parallel dimension that briefly crossed paths with ours. One person argued he had walked out of a secret military experiment and was eliminated to keep it quiet. But one detail never changed: his certainty. This wasn't a man acting confused. According to the accounts, he believed he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That detail kept people hooked. This wasn't just an unsolved case. It felt like a question that struck at reality itself. What if he wasn't mistaken? What if everyone else was? With no solid facts, the legend shifted. The year of the incident changed. Some versions said 1950, others 1960. His appearance changed. The location of his hotel changed. But the core stayed the same. A man with a passport from a country that didn't exist, who vanished under surveillance. Some retellings added new characters, like a mysterious woman, a second traveler, or a briefcase filled with advanced technology. None of it was verified. All of it sounded believable because the original story had already opened the door to the impossible. By the time mainstream media noticed, the story had grown into a modern myth. Paranormal podcasts brought it to life. TikTok creators broke it down in short clips filled with suspense. And in the comments, people kept asking the same thing. Was this real? Was there ever a man? Or had it always been fiction? The mystery reached a point where no one could answer clearly, but a few researchers pushed deeper. They traced the earliest versions of the story, looking for an original report, a name, a date. Most found nothing. But one detail slowly resurfaced in hidden archives and intelligence records. A man named Zagreus, arrested in Japan around 1960, had been caught carrying false documents and claiming to be from a country no one had heard of. It sounded far too familiar. His story mirrored the legend almost exactly, including his calm behavior and the elaborate forgery. Suddenly, the myth didn't feel weightless anymore. It had a name, a paper trail, and most importantly, a motive that had nothing to do with science fiction. People spent years wondering if the man was from another world. But the real question was much closer to home. What if he was from this one? What if he was created by it? And what if his story wasn't about hidden dimensions, but about hidden truths? The legend kept living not because of the mystery it created, but because of what it suggested beneath the surface. A world where borders can be invented, identities created, and truth is as easy to shape as paper. The man from Taured became a ghost, but behind that ghost, a very human story waited to be uncovered, and it was about to come to light. The 1960 revelation. In 1960, 6 years after the man from Taured supposedly vanished, a strange figure appeared in Tokyo under very different circumstances. His name was John Allen Kuchar Zagreus. Unlike the mysterious traveler in the legend, Zagreus did not disappear. He was arrested. His charges included passport fraud, false identity, and attempted bank fraud. But when investigators looked closer, they found that the lies he built were far more complex than a normal scam. He claimed to be a naturalized Ethiopian and an intelligence agent for several nations. He also claimed to be on a diplomatic mission from a country called Taured. That name immediately stood out to anyone familiar with the old Taured legend. According to court records and Japanese press reports, Zagreus entered Japan using an extremely detailed forged passport. The document wasn't just fake, it was convincing. It carried realistic stamps, a visa from a Middle Eastern country, and listed Taured as his origin. No official had heard of it. When questioned, Zagreus said Taured was located south of the Sahara and had existed for centuries. He even had printed materials, including a fake embassy listing, business cards, and an unusual backstory. The documents were so advanced for the time that some Japanese officials briefly wondered if they were dealing with a new nation whose recognition had not reached Japan yet. That illusion collapsed fast. None of the information could be verified. The companies he mentioned were fake. The embassies didn't exist. And Taured wasn't on any map. What startled investigators most was his behavior. Calm, articulate, and fluent in several languages, he never acted like someone caught in a lie. One Japanese reporter who attended his trial later wrote, "He spoke with the confidence of a diplomat and the ease of someone who believed every word he said. He didn't come across as a criminal. He came across as someone who had practiced this role so long it had become real." The story didn't make big headlines outside Japan, but behind the scenes, intelligence agencies noticed. Zagris's background was unclear. He had allegedly worked in military and political roles across Europe and the Middle East. There were whispers that he had taken part in information operations or espionage. Some believed he invented Taured not for money, but to move across borders without raising suspicion. During the Cold War, truth itself had become something governments tried to control. A fake identity could be as threatening as a weapon. Years later, declassified documents revealed that Zagris had been monitored by at least 2 intelligence services. The records were vague, heavily edited, and filled with unclear notes. But one line written in the margin of a memo stood out. It said, "He is not from another dimension. He is from our own, and that's what makes it worse." Reporters in the 1980s and later tried to connect Zagris directly to the Taured legend, but the pieces didn't fit cleanly. The legend had already been reshaped by imagination. But Zagris wasn't a myth. He was real. The Taured passport existed. The claims existed. The man was caught, tried, and sentenced. And the most unsettling part wasn't what he did. It was how close he came to succeeding. For decades, people treated the man from Taured as a curiosity from late-night conversations and internet forums. But when the story was compared with the real case of John Allen Kuchar Zagris, the illusion broke in the most troubling way. The man from Taured wasn't an interdimensional traveler. He wasn't a glitch in reality. He wasn't from a parallel timeline. He was real. His passport was real. And his reasons were far darker than anyone expected. Zagris didn't just forge documents. He created an entire national identity. He built a history, designed customs stamps from various countries, and behaved like an experienced diplomat. His knowledge of foreign policy, languages, and banking systems was too strong for a small-time criminal. That's what investigators noticed. He didn't act like someone running a simple scam. He acted like someone who had practiced the role for years. When questioned about his origins, he insisted with complete confidence that Taured existed as a real sovereign nation. He spoke of embassies, agreements, and trade relationships that no one could confirm. When asked why no one else knew of it, he said that some nations stay hidden on purpose. Whether he believed it or was simply very skilled at lying didn't matter anymore. The effect was the same. He bent reality just enough to make people hesitate. As the years went by, more documents came to light. Declassified files from Japanese, British, and American sources suggested that Zagris may have been involved in an intelligence mission. He was believed to have worked as a courier who transported sensitive materials while using forged identities. At some point, it appeared he either broke away from his handlers or went further than anyone thought he would. One memo mentioned the use of fabricated identities not only to move people but to test how far international trust could be pushed. Could someone create a fictional country and gain entry into restricted airspace? Could they cross a border undetected with the right documents and a story no one questioned? In one internal report, a senior intelligence officer reviewed the Taured case and wrote a short note in the margin. It's reality. That same line was repeated years later by journalists who studied the case in the 1980s. "We always assumed it was an urban myth," one reporter said. "But when we finally saw the archived files, it wasn't just a story. It was a model." The man from Taured existed, and the truth behind him is far more unsettling than people realized. If Zagreus pulled this off in the 1960s, what could be happening today? His actions exposed a blind spot in international security, an opening in systems that depend on documents, appearances, and basic assumptions. If one man walked into a country with a fictional passport and almost walked out without consequences, how many others have done the same? How many entries in visa records, diplomatic lists, or trade logs belong to people who were never real? The man from Taured wasn't simply a strange tale about a traveler with no home country. He was a warning. He showed how the borders we depend on, the nations we believe are fixed, and the systems meant to protect us can all be rewritten with a printer, a believable story, and confidence. For years, people focused on where he came from. The real question was what his presence represented. It wasn't fantasy or science fiction. It was a form of manipulation that can happen quietly and without attention. These things often unfold behind closed doors, in places where the truth can disappear as easily as the man who carried it. After Zagreus was caught, put on trial, and handled quietly, the world simply moved forward. The man from Taured wasn't a mystery of the supernatural. He was a demonstration, and that is what makes his story so unsettling. He showed how simple it can be to slip through the weak points in the system. And it raises a difficult question. Who else is slipping through them right now? Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.